So happy Monday. Welcome to our open house Q&A. Ask any question and you get an appropriate. It might not be a complete answer, but then we'll try to make sure that all the answers are complete as much as possible. Just make sure you're using the chat button. If we answer a question and you have a follow-up, just put it in the chat button. So let's see how to answer the questions. First question says that, oh, let's look at that first question. As a Scrum Master, how do you ensure transparency between teams and the stakeholder? Very important. Now, the Scrum framework itself has already been configured in a way that allowed enable transparency. So transparency between the team and the stakeholder happen during sprint review or iteration review. In that case, the stakeholder it's able to see what the team has been working on because the team present increments that they have been working on, or the team demo increment. And if they don't have any increment, they review what they have been working on. In that way, the stakeholder have the opportunity to ask any question, and then we can all know what is going on in the project. Now, in the case where the stakeholder are not engaging in participating in the review, that is where we start having issue of transparency because they are not taking the time to come into the review session to see what the team is doing, which means that if we're continuously building the project and at the end of the project, they come and say, oh, we request some changes, what happened? That transparency wasn't happen. So the Scrum framework enabled the stakeholder to come in every 2 weeks during an event called the spring review or the iteration review, and they can be able to see what is going on. That is how transparency is enforced within that environment. How does cloud migration project work? All right, when we talk about cloud migration project, remember that cloud migration, it's more or less an innovation, right? Many companies have stored most of the data in hard disks or maybe in hard copies or maybe in their local files. So now, I think one of the most widely used is the Amazon Cloud Services, where it offers different company the possibility to store information in the cloud. Okay, let's say you have an iPhone. An iPhone is going to suggest that, oh, you don't need a lot of space, just buy more cloud space, which means that you don't need to host this information in your phone. You need to host them somewhere that even if you log in on the browser, you go to your cloud space, you can be able to see. So cloud migration most often is migrating from one of the cloud system to another. Now, the different cloud system, we have DynamoDB, we have Internet Hub, yeah, IoT Hub, Internet of Things Hub. We also have Event Hub. We also have Postgres. So the different one, but the most popular are the one hosted by Amazon Cloud Services. So when you hear about cloud migration, it's just like we're trying to put our information where everyone can access or where we can access without going to a particular location. Just with a simple login or so, we can access that data. The next question says, as a Scrum Master, how do you ensure the process is transparent? Oh, we answered that question already. So you asked that question twice. What are my responsibility as a Scrum Master during release planning? All right, this is a very important question. Now, for you to effectively answer that question, you need to understand what release planning is all about. So that's the first step. Now, for you to understand what release planning is all about, you need to understand the different levels of agile product delivery. Right. When we talk about the different levels of agile product delivery or the 5 levels of agile planning. Let me see if I can quickly share that. It's very important because if you don't understand this, you always be confused about release planning. Now, if you see my screen, you will realize that at this particular point, what's happening? We have the product vision, we have the roadmap, we have release planning. So release planning, it's actually enabling us to effectively plan how the different sprint or the different iteration are supposed to roll out, right? So that is release planning. Now, if you understand that that is what release planning is all about, then what is going to be your role as a Scrum Master in release planning? Now, as a Scrum Master, your role during sprint planning or during any planning is to make sure that your team commit to what they can deliver, right? Your team is committing to the right amount of work. If your team commit to the right amount of work, then you need to ensure that it is delivered on time. How do you enable that it is delivered on time? Very simple. Now, what you can do is that you should be able to go to your to the different releases that are being scheduled. How do you know if a release being scheduled or not? If you look at your, if you look at right here, if you look at your Jira bot, right, there is always a section called releases. Now, release planning, if I go right here, you see, these releases are tagged per version. A version simply means that, or let's look at 1.1, version 1.1. If I click on this version, you realize that it's going to show me all stories that need to be released in that version. And releases are tagged based on futures. So in a nutshell, you can say that release planning is how we plan to release the futures in different increments. Now, also one thing you see here, it should, when you click on any of your release, it show you what has been completed, what is left uncompleted, and it also gives you an idea of the date we are expecting everything to be done. So with this, you can effectively coach your team on how to go ahead with your releases. Now let's look at this. It shows that many items are still undone. Now I'm going to go back to my spring backlog with an active spring. I want to be able to move, let me move to item, which are definitely part of this release to done, right? Let me move to item to done. If I move to item to done and I go back to that same release, now that was version 1.1. You see how it has changed? So release planning help you to be able to track the progress of your team based on what has been planned to be released. So I hope that's clear enough. So release planning, we plan based on the different iteration, what is meant to go out after the second, after the third iteration, and you can effectively tag your stories, or you can even tag futures into releases. Now, one of the advantage of tagging stories into releases is because we can have a future and we can be able to break that future into certain stuff. Or now, if I have a future, I'll be able to track what percentage of that future has been completed, right? But then if I have also story marked into releases, I can be able to see which of these stories are yet completed, what state they are in the release process and all of that. So it's a bigger overview. And now the difference between release planning and sprint planning is that a release can cut across multiple sprints. So it's not just in one sprint, it cut across multiple sprints. Okay, then the next question says that, what is your strength and weakness as a Scrum Master? All right. What I'm definitely going to use most frequently is my strength is that I pay attention to detail. That's a strength. But if you're saying you pay attention to detail, it's a very tricky one, right? If you say you pay attention to detail, what does that mean? If I ask you a question, okay, can you explain to me what release planning is all about? and you're not focused on that question, or you say, okay, before I tell you what release planning is all about, let me go back and start explaining what Agile is before you come back. You're not paying attention to details, right? Now, detail simply means that you pay attention to the last command that is wanted. I'm going to explain something for about 3 minutes, but the reason I'm explaining that is to ask one single question, right? So when I ask that question, if you are paying attention to detail, you should be able to give me the right answer. And that's why one of your biggest advantage in your interview is not just answering, they're also looking to evaluate if you pay attention to detail. So if you notice you're not someone who pay attention to detail, you can say one of my strengths is that I focus on the goals. So when I work with my team, we have a goal and make sure that I help my team to effectively track that goal and be able to identify any challenge that may be holding them back and help them to resolve it. Now, one of my weakness, or you can, which is a, now you always have to pay forward, don't fail backward. One of my weakness is that sometimes I give so much time to the team that it feel like maybe they might be leaning on me so much. So I'm trying to work on that to see how I'm not just available, but I can empower them so that even if I'm out for 2 days or so, they can still do what is they need to do. So it's a good aspect, but at the same time, it's also a weakness because if you're giving so much time and you're not there, what happened? It's like, oh, you've always been there. It might affect them a bit. So that can be a weakness as well. Now, another weakness you can also give is that sometimes you pay so much attention to work that you forget to kind of put a life balance in it. And you know it's not good for her and it might get you some fatigue, but it's also stuff that you're working on. So it's good for the company, but for you, so always pay forward. All right. And the next question says, what do you understand by value stream? Very important. So value stream, it happened at the portfolio level. So it's an end-to-end process on how we're going to work on the products. Let's say Microsoft is planning to release a new version of Microsoft Word, right? They're planning to kind of add new features, new functionality, and maybe make it more adaptable to the cloud system. Now, they are going to build an end-to-end process on how that will be done. So that's called a value stream. Now, Microsoft also have other product, right? Not just uh not just the Microsoft Word. They might have other product they're working on. For instance, the Microsoft Surface Pro, which is a tablet, which they also build, right? That's a different value stream which they're building because it has its own end-to-end process on how that is built compared to the Microsoft. So a value stream identify a product line that is generating a business value. That's what they call value stream. Now, if you go into the Apple company, for instance, you realize that they might have the iWatch as a value stream. They might have like maybe just the operating system, like the iOS system. You see, they keep improving the system as a value stream. Now, they also have licenses, which are like the warranty, they also get you to buy as a different value stream. How does value stream help a company, or what's the importance of value stream? It helps us focus on where should we invest the money. So let's say that we're a company, we have about 5 value streams, and let's say something come up that hit one of our value stream. We'll realize that, hey, we are not having enough business outcome on this value stream. So let's shift our focus to focus on a different value stream so that we can still stay in business. And that's the most important, one of the very important goals for Agile. Agile is very, very help company to identify this value stream. And instead of focusing on activities, we are focusing on product line with business outcome at the same time. So That's what a value stream helps you to do. So we start by mapping a value stream workshop with portfolio, helping align the business proposition, who we need in the team, and all of that right down to the team level. So it's an end-to-end process that defines how a product is going to be delivered from the conception to the end and pay so much attention on the value it is generating. When you see the word stream, it's like, right, stream, it has a source and it has an ending, right? So kind of have that idea that can guide you on what to say or what to do at that point. All right. The next question says that I see only Epic and Tag on my Jira board. I didn't see the other, not sure why. All right, the reason why you might see limited feature on your Jira board is because of the setting. If you go right here and you go to um, project setting, you can be able, and you go to project setting and you go to right here, features, you can be able to, let's look at now, we have the roadmap. We have to be able to activate all of this feature. But then I think our point would be on the on adding stories and blocks, right? On adding stories and blocks. Or let me go back. It's not going to be on project setting. It's going to be on your bot setting. So on the bot setting, you go right here, this three dot, you click on bot setting. Now, if you go on bot setting, you'll be able to see right here issues. So, oh, sorry, not on issues. If you go on your bot setting, you'll be able to see, let's see, columns in lane general. If I click on general, where do I find this stuff? Issue detail. No, not yet. Just give me a second. Let me figure this out. Okay, right here. So no, yeah, it's a different workflow to do this. No, we're not doing workflow. We're doing tags. We're doing issue type. Okay, right here, issue type. Now, in most of the cases you see right here, you have not activated the bug and the story level. So if you go on it, on the issue type, you should be able to figure out how to add that in. I guess right here. I'm gonna come back to this. Let's proceed with the other ones. I'm gonna come back to how to handle that one at the end of it, so that will take my time to go through it. If your manager is to say one thing about you, what will your manager say? My manager would tell me that I am goal oriented and I am time conscious, right? I respond to time. So one thing would be goal oriented. You know exactly what you need to do and at what time you need to do. So I will always go with goal oriented. All right. What can I do to believe in myself as a Scrum Master? Very important question. What can you do to believe in yourself? Now, confidence comes from technical know-how. Invest more time. Invest more time in understanding the concept. The reason we don't believe in ourselves is because we're not too sure that what we are doing is the right thing. So we have less belief. So for you to increase your belief, increase the time you invest in studying the subject matter. When you increase the time you invest in studying whatsoever you're doing, automatically you're increasing your belief. So belief it's action. When you know it, you can easily help someone. But if you're not too sure yourself, what happened? It become a bit challenging to just point. But okay, look, when I was trying to do how to configure this, that's something I do once in a while, right? So it's kind of if I when I go back there, maybe I need to take time and just maybe about 3 4 minutes read through and know exactly what to do. But if it's something that I do like every day, right? It's gonna be one click and you're out there. So my belief will be, but because I wasn't too sure that, oh, this is it, I need to take time to go through it. So if someone like say, hey, what's an expert that can show me how to do this? Because I don't have so much belief in that aspect, I'm not going to, right? I'm just going to be silent, right? Except nobody owns it. I can say, okay, let me try. So believing in yourself is in improving on your capability. What are some of the first things you have to do on your first day at job as a Scrum Master? Very important. We are assuming that you've been able to master the practice because that is what you should do before your first day. Your first day, the three things you want to do. Number one, you want to be able to locate where to get help, right? And where you locate that is first of all with the first meeting with your manager or the person that's onboarding you. And most often it's going to be your manager. So what you do is most often they're going to tell you, okay, look, this is give you an overview of what we do. So your most important value in your first day is to what? Listen, observe before ask question. If not, you might want to bring your expertise and like, okay, yeah, based on what you told me, I see that a team need this, a team need this, and you start advising when you're not supposed to advise. I spoke to a manager a couple of days, and he told me, look, I wanted to bring someone into my team. And when I was interviewing the person started advising me on what to do. And the person did not even know that he was giving a very wrong solution. We have tried a couple of times and we have not succeeded. Right? And that person thinks that, oh, I want to prove how good I am. And that is a trap we fall into most of the time when we're like, oh, I want to make myself useful. And then we start pushing out stuff so fast that we know. Now, making yourself useful is not about how much you can give your team, it's about the value. Value is not in saying so many things, it's in listening. And when you provide something, they can see an immediate result and they can be able to like, oh wow, this is very important. So and it takes you some time to observe before you can do that, and which is very important for you to focus on during your first day at work. So the next question say, how do you promote an agile mindset across department boundaries and throughout the organization in pursuit? What is the strategy when coaching stakeholders not familiar with IT? All right. Now, the value or the importance of agile is that we focus on value delivery. Our communication language is value delivery, and that is why we preferably use story points rather than using technicality of the different future to communicate to. So helping stakeholder or promoting agile mindset throughout the company is in understanding that now when we talk about delivery and we talk about agile product delivery, it's about two things: business value versus activities. What should we be doing? How should we be communicating? And how does it contribute to business value? So Agile help us to measure faster. It's not like, or it's not another way of doing things. It embedded in the traditional way of doing things. It built from the traditional ways of doing things, but it provides us an opportunity to be able to pull everyone along by not only focusing on the technical aspect, but by focusing on the value, on the business value. We pull all stakeholders along by using non-technical language. And the non-technical language is to show them the business value we are creating. And that is why the work that is being done by the technical team, we communicate it in user story. So, and this also kind of come up with a question where we always get, okay, now you're not a technical person. How are you going to support a technical team? Now, the reason I'm brought in as a non-technical person is because that is the value the team needs. If the team need another technical person, they'll hire another developer. They'll hire another QA. But a team needs someone that can help the technical team to be able to pull what they're doing to add value. So what I do is I'm going to collaborate with my team, and they are going to help me understand what they are doing in terms of the business value. In that case, I'm also helping them to see how valuable they are contributing to the entire business value rather than making them know that, oh, we're just building code. They can be able to see the value they are bringing in the entire company. So that's the value you bring in the team. So when you always have that question, or you're not a technical person, how are you going to help the team? Right. So if you were to be a technical person, you would be a developer, not a scrum master, not someone supporting them. But then your goal is to be able to help them add more value in what they're doing and to help business or management. Management is not technical, but they need to understand what the technical people do. So you go to them, pick out what they're doing in a non-technical language, communicate to business, but your biggest goal is to help them understand the business value they are delivering. Give me an example of how you had to change your style or approach of work to communicate more effectively. I would say I have not had to change my style or approach of work to communicate more effectively because as a Scrum Master, I do understand that communication is a very important aspect. What I do is that I might be able to understand, or I try as much as ever to identify the different values my team is bringing, or every member of my team is bringing, and try to showcase how this value can help us move together as a team. Let's say, for instance, I have a junior developer who is struggling and feel like, oh, I'm left out because I'm not as fast as someone that has been there for 27 years. How do I use my communication approach, or how do I use my coaching approach to help them know that they are as valuable as any other person in there? Now I'm able to understand that we are operating as a team. And if one story point is missing for us to deliver an increment, that increment is not complete. So no matter what we are doing, and no matter what level of expertise we have, if we don't pull that connection, we are always going to have technical debt. So in that case, we are able to break, but what's the question? Yeah. In that case, all right, in that case, we are able to communicate in a common language, which is about what? It's about business. Show everyone how what they are doing is adding to our business and tell them they're very important. If we're missing one story point, we cannot meet it. So let them not feel as important. Please explain spring refinement process and spring planning process. So refinement simply means we are getting ready, right? Let's say that you have a red carpet party coming up on the 1st of November, which is going to be next week, right? Today is the 24th of October. Now, refinement is going to be you going to your wardrobe and try to sort out exactly what you're going to pick on, right? And maybe you have about 5 preferred outfits you want to put. Now, you want to think that this is the first, this is the second. You want to sort them out so that that day you don't get up and start thinking. So when we talk about backlog refinement, the same thing. We have work that is coming up at spring planning. So we need to go and start prioritizing what we are going to do and make sure that it is ready. And that is why backlog refinement is very important. If your team can effectively prioritize the backlog, then they're going to have a very easy going time during the spring planning. Now, spring planning, we are just double checking. Remember, if you have already sorted out what you're going to wear before the day of that event, what happened? You just pick on, okay, I'm ready to go, right? And what you might just need to do is just to double check again on that day to make sure that, oh, it's still on tag, or if you've not changed your mind. Maybe you pick out something, you were forecasting that the weather's going to be very warm. And on that day, the reason you still need to check on that day, things might change, right? So the fact that we do backlog prioritization doesn't mean that things cannot change. We just prioritize and we're hoping that things are not going to change. But if things change, what happened? You need to readjust. That's where requirements are constantly changing. We need to readjust. But in most of the cases, if we constantly have like a deep backlog, which is about 2 spring or 2 iteration deeper, we'll realize that even things change, they're just gonna, the flexibility will not really be that much compared to if you did not plan at all, if you did not prepare at all. And let's say for some reason you went out and you were hoping to come back and have about 1 hour to get ready. And you head down by traffic and got home like 10 minutes and none of that was ready. What are you going to do? Go very late and maybe get very upset. Now put yourself in a tight situation where you start getting upset with anything that you see. So backlog refinement help us to reduce that stress and to prepare ahead of time. When it is well planned, you're halfway done. All right. Tell me about a time when you had to deal with conflict opinion on a product or conflicting opinion on a product. Most often for this type of questions, I'm going to say that I definitely have not had to deal with that because we try as much as possible to ensure that our processes are explained to everyone. So we spend so much time in the backlog refinement trying to explain or trying to have an understanding on what needs to be done. So in most of the cases, opinions are definitely not conflicting. They're more of clarification that help each other or people that are working on the product to be able to deal with it. All right. Now, if you want to be the Superman or the Superwoman and give something like a bit more technical or so, or give something which is kind of out of the box. Now, conflicting opinion can come on, you can say, the understanding of the definition of ready, right? Or the understanding of the definition of ready. So you pick something that is very obvious. You can say, okay, I had we had a misunderstanding where the product owner or the product owner did not the product, our product manager did not really have a clear understanding of what it meant by definition of ready. So they thought that if we have an item coming in the backlog, and it should automatically be ready to go ahead. So he wasn't understanding why we should not be pulling as many items and still waiting to get more clarity. But the product owner, we had to have a meeting with the product owner and we had a session with the manager to explain to the manager what actually definition of ready means. That is not just that we have the item in the backlog, is that we need to have a conversation on that item as a team. We need to have put a story point to that item, and we need to have someone that is willing to pick up that item and complete it during the spring before it can move into a spring backlog. So in that case, not all the work can just be pulled in at any time and move to the sprint backlog, right? So that was more like a conflicting idea, like, oh, can you guys go to the backlog and take up this item? I want to see it by the next 10 minutes. It's like, oh no, it's not yet ready. It's like, what do you mean it's not yet ready? It's in the backlog, so you guys can do that, right? So we needed to go an extra mile to give that explanation. That's a bit techy, but I'm not gonna really expect you to go that way. But that is conflicting on how we visualize product, right? And it's now the reason why it might be a good scenario because managers are managers. Managers don't think like scrum masters. Scrum masters and product owner, they have a product thinking, product design, a design thinking. Now managers want it to be done, and they would not see reason why you're not completing this unless you can help them understand why. And that is why a very important aspect for you is to be able to liaise with leadership, explain to them what might be the challenges for you to not meeting up with, um, or you not to meet up with some of the demands that they might be asking. So we educate them on the importance of agile project delivery. Right. Tell us about the most challenging audience you have ever had to address. The most challenging audience I've ever have to address is meeting a new team. And this is because when you meet a new team, they have different value. You might be have been the best scrum master in a different environment. When you meet a new team, it's a big challenging audience. Number one, you have that responsibility to meet them individually, to understand not just their role in the team, but the value they bring in. Let's say that I meet you and I say, hey, what's some of your favorite activities? And I understand that you love cycling. Now, I need to find a way to look at how I can always bring up that value, try to incorporate it into a couple of examples while we are working on idea. And I meet the other person and they love basketball or they love playing table tennis. Now, those are the different value which you learn from every individual and also their culture. They're coming from different cultural background. So it's also a very difficult audience. Now, you might be saying something which is really, really okay in your culture, but you don't know that it might be an offense. So you need to take out time and learn that as a Scrum Master by having informal conversation during one-on-one and by also playing games that help you to better understand your team and make each of them kind of really open up. So for me, I would say that the most challenging audience I always have to address is my team. And when I get them on one spot, I know I'm on a winning track. I'll talk a bit about different types of teams. Okay. This is a controversial question, right? Um, when we say different type of teams, we might be referring to a Scrum team, a Kanban team, a team in a safe environment, and all of that. When we say different type of team, we might also refer the team to what the teams have been working on, or a mobile team, a web portal team, a DevOps team, a data science team. But most environment will not really have those separation. They will have a development team, and that team, they're both working on all the different aspects. Let's say a team that is working on an MVP, a minimum viable product, right? That team will try to make sure that that team is cross-functional, which means they have people that can work on all the different part of the project present in that team because we're building an MVP, right? An MVP simply means that we want to build something that is not fully valuable. Now, the quality is not at top, but the quality is in a way that we can test and at least see that it's working. So before we ever go on board and start really investing and bringing large teams on board, we always have to build a minimum viable product to test the workability of that product before we go ahead and start scaling and expanding. Okay. How do you start a new team to become fully agile? All right. Now we are assuming as a Scrum Master, you let's look at it from two perspectives, right? You get into a company and they say, okay, we're about to start agile. We don't know how to go about. That's a different scenario. You get into a company, they already have a team and they're bringing you as a Scrum Master. That's a different scenario. So let's go to the baseline where the company have not started the team and you're coming in as a Scrum Master to help them from zero. So the first thing you want to do is to be able to help them understand what is the product, what is the business proposition, or what's the value they want to deliver, what's the value of the product, or what's the outcome of the product they want to deliver. Who do they need in order to fully deliver this product? What are the different skill sets? So in that case, you can, if they were working in a project approach, a project approach simply means that they're going to have different departments. The development department, maybe the QA department, maybe uh, the operation department. Now you need to be able to help them identify who need to be part of a team. So you do team formation. Who need to be part of the team in order to effectively deliver that product. So you identify a team that is cross-functional. Now, the same thing before you get into most of the team that job has been done. So you only meet a team and then you need to now help them become agile. So when you meet this team, one of the first step you need to do is it's what? You form a team, which is the first step in team formation. Forming a team is what? One of the first early phase of forming a team is by getting a team agreement. A team agreement is not just what a team should do and not do. It also go ahead to specify the rules and the definition of who should be doing what, right? And also how should we be doing it. So a team agreement helps us to have a binding or a common goal. Now, when we have this team agreement, you can go ahead now and put in place a couple of workshops as a Scrum Master that can help them understand some of the agile processes, like understanding the definition of done, the definition of ready, the role of the developer, the role of you can build some SOP to be able to help them start understanding that. And now the rest of the work will be more of feedback. Now, when you are implementing, there is feedback. What is feedback? You're observing how they are behaving, and then you are using the result that is generated by the behavior to create new circle of learning. So it's one step at a time. So you move from forming to norming. Norming is where they start already understanding the process and then normalizing yourself with the process now to performing. At the stage of performing, they know exactly what to do without coming back to you to ask, oh, I'm done with work. What should I do? Drag it to the next column, or should I leave it there for the PO to do that? Now they already understand what the process it's all about. Okay. Tell me about the time when you dealt with a tight deadline and how you manage your team. I've never had to deal with a tight deadline because um, most often it might happen, but most often it generally deal with disaster. But if I really have to deal with a tight deadline, what I want to pay attention to the happy index of my team, which means I need to get my team to agree that they are capable of doing it so that we're not just delivering because we want people to work overnight. So one of the things I'll possibly do is to request for additional resources. Now, if I'm not able to get additional resources, I am going to negotiate with my team member to commit to some extra work or to some extra time. In that case, instead of them taking, let's say, 8 story point per sprint, I might stretch them to take about 13 or 14. right? In that case, they will need to put in extra time in order to build the entire process so we can meet up with the deadline. But it's always most valuable to request for external support and external resource. Now, I'm going to give you a practical example. There was a time I needed to meet a deadline. We needed to meet a deadline. And the DevOps engineer in our team was on a vacation because he was getting married. So he was away for a month. And a new requirement came in. Now, when he was going away, we did not, most of the items that are going to resolve require DevOps support. We had the DevOps from a different team opted to come in and give support when it's needed. But we realized that the part-time support wasn't enough. So escalated that to the manager, and the manager also escalated it up. And the company was able to deploy a DevOps engineer from a completely different location in Europe. And that DevOps engineer came in to work with our team for that 1 month period as a full time for that 1 month period when he was then away. So you always have to understand that you don't always push your team. Pushing your team to commit extra is the last resource. Why? Because if they push them too hard and they burn out, they use shortcut. What happened? Your technical debt is going to grow uncontrollably. And you are trying to push it out. What happened? You're creating another backlog of support elsewhere because work is going to come back again. So always coach your company to understand exactly the implication of that. All right. Apart from the role of a Scrum Master, what else do you do? Okay. I don't do anything else. I play my role as a Scrum Master, and I can support other members of my team if needed. So I'm not a developer. I'm not this. In an Agile team, I play the role of a Scrum Master. And if you don't understand the role of a Scrum Master, maybe I can explain to you what exactly that is. Now, as a Scrum Master, it's not just enough to facilitate events and remove impediments. My role is also to understand the entire business value from end to end and look at how I can support management and stakeholders on the entire process. Let's say, for instance, I'm going through the product backlog or I'm going through the product roadmap and I'm trying to visualize how my team is going to complete work within the next 3 months. And I'm able to identify that most of the stories that are in there or most of the work that has been defined there is not complete or is not elaborated. It is my place to go to management and propose that, hey, we need to get this more ready ahead of time so that we don't fall back on time. So as a Scrum Master, I think there is so much to do if we have clarity. It's about asking questions and contributing to business value. So you're more as not only a Scrum Master, a strategist to the company rather than a facilitator and an impediment remover. Yeah, and the possible reason they'll ask you that question is because they feel like, oh, if you don't have, if you're not facilitating an event, you're just sitting behind your computer doing nothing. So you need to make that distinction. All right. So okay, can you explain more on the 4 Scrum event? There are 5 Scrum events, not 4. All right, you would say 4 if you have read the Scrum guide. But if you practice, you realize that there are 5 events that cannot be replaced. The first is the sprint planning. It's always the first one. And the sprint planning, we are estimating the work that need to be completed within the next sprint cycle. And while we are doing that, we are checking to make sure we have the right capacity. The capacity helps us to know what amount of work to take. The amount of work that we are capable to commit to is called the velocity. And the work that we actually commit to is called the load. All right. So, for instance, let's say I have 5 team members, right? And the average velocity of my team is 38 story point. That's my velocity, right? But if we are committing, maybe for some reason we can commit to 42. So that's the load, right? Someone can say, oh, I can take a bit more. Or maybe our velocity is 38. But because most member of my team are on vacation, like we have the Indian New Year this week, and we commit to 25. That's our load. It's not our velocity, but that's the load for that sprint. All right. So, but also importantly, during the sprint planning, we make sure that we're estimating the story. Now, estimation is a very important ceremony, and it should happen during backlog refinement. Can it also happen during sprint planning? Yes. For instance, we might be looking at a story during sprint planning and we'll realize that, oh, this story also needs some APIs to be built in. Now we'll create another story and we're going ahead to estimate because we need to complete it in that sprint. What happens if we already have full load for that sprint? We reprioritize before you start the sprint. Things might change. You just reprioritize your backlog that you've created and shift things that are more or less priority to the other sprint. Right. So during the sprint planning, ensure your capacity is good, your velocity is good, all your estimate is good, everyone is participating. When you have the right amount of work, you go ahead, you set your sprint goal, and you launch your sprint. The sprint goal come at the end of the sprint because the sprint goal simply tell us this is what we want to achieve. So you cannot maybe go ahead and define what you want to achieve. Prioritization predetermine that, but the goal should come at the end when you've already agreed and said, this is what we want to achieve. All right. So how do you also make sure that all your team members have the right amount of work during the sprint planning? Now, we know that as Scrum Master or as an Agile team, we should not be assigning stories to team members, right? But then if I say, hello, Miranda, what is your, what will you be willing or what do you want to work on this sprint? And I say, okay, I would like to work on X, Y, Z. Now I'm not assigning, I'm giving you the power to be able to select what you can pick. Now, if we are a performing team, we're not going to bother about cherry picking. But if we are a baby team, maybe you probably will want to pick maybe a couple of stuff that are easy. But as a facilitator, when you notice that this is what is happening, you try to regulate. Maybe the next sprint, I'm not going to start with you. I'll start with someone else, right? And I'll continuously address that during the retrospective to be able to have respect. Because if you're cherry picking and you feel like, oh, I should be the one doing all the easy stuff, you're not giving respect to your other member. You're being selfish, right? So putting all of those values help us to have a balanced sprint planning. After sprint planning is the daily stand-up. The daily stand-up, it's an event where we are able to keep every other person in the team informed on where we are in relation to our sprint goal, and to be able to see if there have been any changes in requirement and how we can effectively collaborate. So it's not only a statue update meeting, it's a very important event because there are so many checks that need to be happening here, which means that if any member of your team for any reason is not participating in the sprint planning, you need to help them understand that if, let's say, another team member required an update from them and they were not there, and that team member need to wait for, let's say, the next day to get that, what's happening? So much business is at stake. So we coach our team member to be part of the daily stand-up by helping them understand business value, right? Now, the next event is the backlog refinement. The backlog refinement should happen in the middle of the current sprint in preparation of the next sprint. So the backlog refinement help us to be able to start thinking ahead what we are going to do. And in backlog refinement, we try to go through the different story, assuming that we have a good product owner that's constantly prioritizing that backlog. We go through the item based on how they are ordered in the product backlog, one after another. And what we are doing is that we're ensuring that every team member understand what needs to be done. And if they understand, we go ahead and we do our story pointing and we pull it to the spring backlog because it is almost ready. Now, it is also not really a good practice to assign story to team members before we estimate. Because if I know I'm the one working on this story, I can push harder to get a higher story point so that I don't commit more, right? But there need to be that balance and transparency. The last day of our sprint is the sprint review, where we are able to go through what we have been working on during that sprint and then have feedback from the stakeholder. And then we do our spring retrospective. Spring retrospective is where we are able to learn from what has been happening during the sprint and to see if there are items which we can improve. Now, in all of these processes, you need to have really good facilitation process to be able to pull your team along. And what are some of the facilitation processes? Now, for instance, one of this agreement we had in this meeting is that put all your questions on the chat box, right? That could be a good facilitation technique for a team that are all behind camera. You can see their face, so it's a bit difficult to really create a rapport with them. Now you can be able to strike a very good conversation. All right, team, locate your chat box, put one item you think that's going to help us, and they start putting, and then you start collaborating with them. You can also use games and just help them to effectively just share some jokes, make the room lively, and push along with your facilitation. Icebreakers are also very important. Like I can come and say, okay, guys, did anyone hear about a very heavy storm that happened in Texas this weekend? It's like, oh wow, what happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? It's like, okay, nothing happened. I just wanted to make sure everyone is awake. So icebreaker cannot be something really, it can just be like, okay, you want to just pull. So it's about being creative. Okay. I think it should be the last question for today, which kind of take us to our time box. Have you seen a situation where a Scrum Master doesn't go through an onboarding process where the organization expect them to start working right away? Right away? If yes, what is the best way to navigate and figure out how to fit in the work? Yes, the normally, if you have 6 years of work experience, they expect you to come in, right, and start working right away. But now, what does it mean to start working right away? It doesn't mean that you get in and you don't ask the question you need to ask. If you get into a new team and they say, okay, that's your team, go take over and start facilitating on your first day. What happened? You don't go in and say, okay, team, welcome to a daily stand up. Please, can you give me your update? No, it's an opportunity for you to showcase your facilitation skills. All right, team, it's an exciting day. It's my first day here, and I'm excited to be facilitating this event. But today, I'm going to learn from what you do. So, can someone volunteer and run the daily stand up for us? So, I should be able to learn from what is going on from this environment. And I could be able to like just call someone, oh, can you just help us facilitate? This week is going to be more of my observation week, and I'm counting on you guys to be able to help me pull through. So I'm going to be more of observing and taking note, and then I'm going to kick in. But if you just come in and say, okay, team, I'm going to be facilitating today. Today is my first day. What's the update? What's the update? It's like, this is not how we do it here. You start creating conflict. You start becoming an impediment on your first day, right? So it's just like I can bring you in to say, okay, that's your first day. Can you facilitate a mastermind? It's like, okay, and you start doing it your own way. Now, it's an opportunity for you to learn, like, okay, yeah, I can do that. But then you are working with people that have been doing it over and over again. So what do? Ask them the answer. They know the answer. And they should be able to help you to pull through. Right. So you just need to act smart, even if it's your first day, it's your, yeah. No matter what you've been doing in a different environment, when you come to a new environment, you're a learner. Let's say if you live in Maryland, when you come to Texas, a different ball game for driving. Many people, when they come to Texas, they don't want to drive, right? It's like, and that's, yeah, if you come to Texas, you're not careful, you're gonna get on the same lane about 4 times because the roads are very wide. You think you're making a turn and then you get on the same lane and like, so that's what happened, right? So you take your time, although you're an expert in driving, now you're in a different environment. So you need to be very conscious while you're getting into the system. All right, great. It was a great session for today. We exhausted our time box. So yeah, we did 1 hour straight. So I think next week we're going to be having a certification training for Safe Scrum Master. For anyone who is not yet Safe Scrum Master certified, as an internal person, you have a 50% discount to take that certification. You want to make sure you have that listed. It's very important to get that certification in your resume. Okay, I'll see you on the other side. Make sure that we are all participating in our teams. Some teams are not really working. Um, we're gonna have a conversation on how to push ahead with that. But the only way to get there is to practice. No matter how many times you listen to this video, right? You're gonna understand a couple of stuff. But if you listen and you practice, there is no interview that's gonna throw you away. For those who have been practicing, you understand that the confidence comes when you start tracking those stuff and start doing it and start taking the lead in your team. So sometimes you need to forget about your team members and your team leader and just pull in, take up the lead, and then we get rolling. All right. See you on the other side.